Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Sorry if this isn't exactly paranormal, but /B/ went to shit a long time ago, and I don't think it's really /K/worthy, so here goes. This is the story of the time I might have almost been gunned down by mysterious, heavily armed guards in the middle of the Alaskan wilderness. Be me a few years ago, just turned 20. I live in a small town in Alaska. My family moved there when I was pretty young from Washington, so my dad could be a roughneck or something at an oil field. Don't remember anything about my life before that. It's Alaska, so it's always cold. So it's not the type of small town where everyone knows each other super well and is close, but more where it's always too cold to have barbecues. So no one ever talks to each other except for when they bump into each other at the only liquor store in a 30-mile radius. For those who don't know, Alaska has this weird law where you can only buy alcohol of any kind, even beer and wine, from liquor stores and bars, not grocery stores or gas stations. Only know it's weird because my dad complains about it constantly. Anyway, at this point, I'm kind of just bored with existence in general, without any really close friends and not tons to do. Weed is legal here, but I'm not old enough to use or possess it, and it was never interesting enough to me for me to try to get it illegally or anything, even if I knew how. Go on walks constantly when not laying around at home, sleeping, or working a part-time job at one of only 3 gas stations and grocery stores in town. In later months, when it's even colder, I go on drives. One day in early November, I worked a double shift because someone no call, no show, and I'm trying to save to move away or something. Come home later than usual because of it. Find my parents already in bed and little bro not home. Figure he's just hanging with friends or something. Cell phones are a thing, but smartphones are still kind of new, and I only know a handful of people who have cell phones of any kind. I am not one of them. Figure if bro was missing, parents would be up and looking for him instead of sleeping. Decide to go on a late-night drive because there's nothing better to do. There's a road that goes up a mountain, over to the top where you can get a good view of the town, and then goes back down. Take it as I am curious to see the town at night. Turns out it's just a town with lights on, go figure. Sit there, bored for a moment. That is, until I remembered the road to the left I went down with my dad to go fishing a few times. Find it and take it. It's not long before I run into a surprisingly solid wood bridge that goes over a river. Usually my dad and I would just go down a dirt road that leads to the river and fish there. Slow down to a crawl and look to the other side. By now the moon is pretty high and there's a blanket of thin mist hugging the ground, but the sky is crystal clear and the moonlight is lighting up everything I can see. Proceed over the bridge. The trees are getting taller and thicker, so much so that I almost don't see the old wooden sign under the thick layer of pine branches. Catch it just in time. Slow down to read it. Park to the side and get out, only to find that it's way too worn to make out than a few characters, or the vestigial remains of what may have once been characters. Just behind it, there's a path that's been totally overgrown, completely choked out by tree roots and undergrowth, but still obviously a trail. Put 2 and 2 together and figure the sign is for the trail. Return to my car and retrieve a pamphlet that had been passed out to everyone in middle school that marks all the hiking trails in the area. This is my first time ever using it. Interestingly enough, I can't find anything near this area. Kinda spooky, but also exciting. Decide to go down it just a bit. Maybe I'll find a new fishing spot for me and Dad. Grab some essentials I always keep in my car because Alaska. A giant flashlight, a couple of road flares, and a hatchet. I really hope I don't run into anything because a hatchet won't do anything against an angry bear or pack of wolves. Probably too dark and cold for anything to be active. Not long after I step into the shadows, it starts to snow a bit. Thankfully, my coat is thick and warm enough, so I press onward. This trail doesn't look like it's been walked in years, and I have no idea why. There are more remote trails that are walked all the time. Stumble every few minutes over a gnarly chunk of rock or tree branch, kinda getting pissed about it. The snow is falling heavier now, and the breeze is picking up as well. See the trail turn sharply around the corner of a hill, and decide I'll see what's around the corner, then turn back. Surprise, surprise, more thick tree trunks. Shrug and turn back, thinking maybe I'll return later. The breeze becomes a gust and throws some snow right into my face. As I'm brushing it off, I hear it. I know it's not as close as it seems. Wind can carry sounds much further than you might think. But the wind has most brought for me a thin, tattered string of words. Get excited to meet someone new like a gigantic dork. I listen for a while longer and I hear it again. Most likely a hunter, but it's pretty late for that. Decide to try and find him and warn him, as Alaskan winter and fall nights can get vicious in a heartbeat, and all evidence, breeze, snow, etc., points to just that happening shortly. Go back around to the corner and assault the far too close tree trunks, trying to crawl my way through. Pause when I hear it again, and notice a second voice. So he's got a buddy, all right. Make it through into a clearing. Look around and notice I've never seen this area before. Look behind me and pick a landmark. The tall, shadowy figure of a pine tree at the peak of another mountain to look for so I won't get lost on my way back. Because if I do, I am 100% dead peek around for a few minutes, pausing every so often to listen after a while with no success. I stood around like an idiot. But then the voices come again. They're much closer this time. Turn toward the direction I heard them coming from, the other side of the clearing, and proceed. Through the trees, I catch a glimpse of a light. Slow down because I realize it might seem weird for some random guy to pop out of the trees in the middle of the night in the middle of the Alaskan wilderness. Decide to locate them first, then call out so I don't surprise them too much. I'm getting closer, close enough to notice that the light I saw earlier isn't that of a campfire, like I had thought at first, but a big old flashlight like mine. Turn said light off, so again, I don't startle them. I'm thinking I'm getting pretty close when I hear a third voice enter the fray, but this one makes me pause. I still can't make out what any of them are saying, but the third voice sounds staticky and distorted, like it's coming from a radio. Okay, so they're part of a group that's spread out and they're using walkie-talkies. Nothing weird about that. Then, I see them. Out from between the trees about 50 feet away come two figures. I was expecting thick coats, bright orange vests, and bolt-action rifles. But these guys are wearing military gear. Not US gear, but not foreign gear either. More like a militia or a private military contractors would wear. Plate carriers, helmets, balaclavas, the like, with what look like ARs or similar sorts of rifles. Naturally, this puts a damper on my spirits. And what I mean to say by that is that I damn near shit my pants, and I ducked down and hoped they didn't see me. After a few tense moments, I'm not dead, so figure they didn't. By now, I'm just listening and holding my breath. The third voice starts up again. At first, I think it's speaking a foreign language or something, which wouldn't have been too weird, as there are a number of Eskimo types in the area who use their languages all the time. Soon realize it's actually some sort of code, like those Russian guys in Stranger Things. I still can't make out every word, but by now I'm freaking out. Wait a while longer until their voices fade away. Wait a while longer. Slowly stand back up. I'm alone, but I don't feel like it. The whole forest, in perfect stillness, feels like it's going to jump out at me at any given moment. Decide it's time to get out of there. Do just that. The snow is pretty heavy, but thankfully the wind has mostly stopped. Have to find the perfect balance between speed and stealth. Eventually make it back to the trail. I spot my car, covered in snow, through the trees and make a beeline for it. That is, until I hear something. The approaching rumble of a vehicle, a big one. That might not sound too weird, and maybe it wasn't, but I'm figuring it's about midnight now, and the road in question had been up until that point completely quiet. I squat down again and wait. What I see is a huge truck that almost looks armored, with massive bright headlights that paint the whole road in a blinding light. I start begging the universe that they won't spot my car. Don't know why, but I feel like I'd be screwed if they did. They rumble on by without stopping, and I let out a breath. Try to control my speed, but can't, and pile into my car. I made it back home without incident, but my whole family was up. Turns out my little brother came back and noticed my car was gone. They were getting worried and were just about to call the cops. I tell them I just went out for a drive and fell asleep in my car. Not super like me, but they buy it. For a long time after that, I wondered what the hell was going on. I had and have no idea what those guys were doing up in the forest. But I think maybe they were private military contractors that had been hired to guard something. As for what exactly, I really don't know.
I just got back from a job I had in Alaska about 2 months ago. I figure it makes a good story, even though it scared the shit out of me at the time. Me. Working as a radio technician. Moving across the country semi-regularly to fill jobs. He had a contract to work at an undermanned radio station in Alaska. The flight is paid for and there are supplies on site. There was a room for lodging, otherwise I'd have to pay for a hotel in the nearby town, which was a few miles away. I already didn't like the sound of a radio station in the Alaskan wilderness miles from any civilization with less than enough workers. Despite this, I accepted the contract because it paid more than any job I'd taken before, and not having to pay for a hotel and for food was a plus. I had been instructed to take a gun with me on the trip, preferably a rifle that shot a large caliber. I ended up taking my Marlin 336W and 30-30 Winchester, and taking an old .22 I had with me for plinking. For your sake as a reader, and to shorten this story by about 3,000 words, I won't go into boarding the plane, getting the guns registered for travel, or establishing residency in Alaska. We landed in Fairbanks. The radio station itself was in the middle of nowhere. They greatly underplayed how isolated this place was. It's southeast of Fairbanks, tucked in between the lower part of Donnelly Dome and the Macomb Plateau. The landscape is very hilly, mountainous, and rough. Most of all, though, it's cold as hell. Drive just over 2 hours and 107 miles from Fairbanks to Fort Greely. Charter an S-350 Airbus helicopter to take me and my luggage to the closest inhabited area to the radio station. Hike with a local guide about 10 miles across tough and snowy terrain to the radio station. Guide stays there for the evening because a storm is setting in. While I got situated there, the guide, other staff, and I got acquainted. There was Kevin, the groundskeeper, who had grown up nearby in Delta Junction. He was 17 and was going off to college soon. Apparently this was one reason the place was undermanned. The pay was over minimum wage, and beside from the technicians, all the jobs were entry level. Kids would work there during the summer and leave when they went to college. There was the guide, whose name I didn't catch, but a few of the others seemed to be familiar with. He was 30-ish and was one of 8 or so local mountaineering and hiking guides. There was also Nathan, a 20-year-old guy saving up to move to Anchorage with his girlfriend. He was the other radio technician. There was supposed to be another employee, but they stopped showing up about a month prior to my arrival. Put my stuff in the lodging room. Go out to talk with the others and get a bite to eat. Enter the main room. Notice that the guide is gone. Hey, where did the guide go? Nathan looked over to me.
Oh, he decided to leave since it was getting late.
You just let him go, during a storm.
He insisted, said something about having to get home as soon as he could. I'm sure he's fine, he's a guide. He knows these mountains better than the bears do.
I wasn't totally okay with this, but I decided Nathan was right and to not make an argument out of it. It bugged me from the beginning that a guide as knowledgeable as he was to just up and leave in a hurry during a storm. The bad news came about a week later. I had been doing my job as I normally would anywhere else, just with heavier clothing and occasional trips outside to restart the heater located in a mini shed near the station. The bad news, as you might guess, was about the guide. He had been found half a mile from the start of the trail leading up to the station. He had been partially eaten, but it was unclear by what or how exactly he died. This spooked us enough that Kevin asked me and Nathan to teach him how to load, fire, and maintain a gun just in case. We spent a few evenings going over basics. I let him carry around my .22 as well. We all started carrying guns with us when we had to go outside and just around the station in general. Nathan had brought his 20-gauge M2 Benelli. It didn't completely ease the tension, but it made us feel safer. We faxed a document saying that an officer would come up to talk with us about the guide's death. A week passed, then another, then another. Repeating this process, it had eventually been 4 weeks and some days since the officer was supposed to be here. We weren't supposed to use the radio equipment for anything besides broadcasting the intended content, but we figured this was important enough to bend the rules. We got in contact with a local police station. Apparently, they couldn't locate a guide to assist an officer up to the station. They had sent one officer, but he hadn't reported back. They said that a blizzard was moving in and would be here within days. We told them what we knew about the guide before his death over the radio. They instructed us to stay put and wait out the storm. They told us to keep an open channel with them for as long as possible. 2 days pass and around 2:30 in the morning we lose contact with the police station. I work until 10 a.m. trying to get in contact with them. No luck. Kevin uses his ancient Nokia brick to call a local town's municipal center. His reception is garbage. Every other call results in the call cannot be completed as dialed message. Get in contact with local government workers. Ask them to get into contact with the police station and let them know we're fine. Also ask them to get into contact with the contracting company. Nathan was ready to jump ship, and to be honest, I was too. For about 3 days we were stuck like that. Not able to broadcast. Little contact with the outside world. I remember the day that we got the message like it was mere hours ago to this day. I had been trying to get some sleep during the storm, since we couldn't do our normal duties anyway. I was shaken awake by Nathan, who told me to get up and come with him. When I finally came to my senses, I saw why he was so worried. The power is off. Not just the heat, the power. I get up and come into the main room where Kevin is sitting, wrapped in 2 heavy blankets and a puffy jacket. He has the .22 on the table and visibly loaded. What's going on?
Power went out a few minutes ago. We heard something outside too. I loaded your rifle for you.
My Marlin was sitting on the table next to a box of 30-30. What did you hear?
Scraping. It sounded like something was trying to claw itself inside.
Probably just an animal. I'll go out and get the heater running. I went to the door with my rifle in hand. Open the door. Snow falls into the doorway and the door is slammed back closed by the wind. We decided to wait out the storm the best we could, but we had to get warmer. Nathan and Kevin tried to start a fire while I gathered blankets, jackets, and any cloth or tarp I could. I found about 5 blankets in total, as well as a few towels and a tarp. We huddled around the small fire, and about 4 hours later the power returned. We assumed that this meant the storm died down a little, so once again I made my way to the door with my rifle. I opened it and a bit of snow fell in, but the door wasn't blown shut immediately. I walked out, trudging through multiple feet of snow. By the time I got to the shed, I was out of breath. I swung open the door to find the heater already running. All that for nothing. I'm halfway back to the station when I feel it. That horrible sensation of being watched. I ran towards the station. As I neared the station, I picked up on a horrible smell. A musky smell, like a dog's hot breath. I bumbled in the door. What is that smell? I slammed the door shut.
I don't smell anything.
I opened the door. It must be out here then, come smell it.
Dude, close the door.
The smell drafted into the station and cut off his sentence. Nathan and Kevin began coughing and gagging. I closed the door, thinking it would help. The air felt thick, like physically heavier than air is supposed to be. I began gagging uncontrollably. After about a minute of hell, it finally subsided as the ventilation system filtered it out. It lingered for days and never really went away entirely. We checked back with the people Kevin had called. No luck getting in contact with the contracting company. They did help us establish a connection with the police station. They said that the officer they sent up was still not back and presumed lost in the storm. We requested help to get out of there. We still had enough food and water for another 2 months. We asked about the possibility of a search and rescue team coming to get us. We only received a one-word response. Unlikely. We had packed our stuff by the door and got ready to sleep for the night. That night I woke up with a harsh chill going through my body. I opened my eyes to see that there was snow everywhere. On the floor, on my bed, on me. All over the room. The door to the room was open, which I distinctly remember closing. I got up and ran out into the main room. The front door was wide open and I noticed that one of our packs was gone. I knew it was Kevin's because his was the closest to the door. My pack, which was next to Kevin's, had a large tear down the middle. It was a rough and uneven tear about the size of a bear's paw. There was some sticky black residue on the bag as well, which smelled like rot and musk combined in a horrible symphony of odors. I slammed the door shut and turned on the lights. I went to wake up Nathan and Kevin. Nathan woke up instantly when I shook him awake, but Kevin's eyes were froze shut. We spent the morning putting hot water on his eyes and eventually got them open. He could see for the most part, but he complained of his eyes being freezing cold to the point of pain despite the rest of his body being warm, even hours after they had been opened and warmed up. The next 2 days were pretty uneventful. Eventually, a team consisting of a police officer and 2 local mountaineering specialists came to pick us up. We were hesitant to tell them about the weird things that had happened to us, but eventually they inquired about our time there and we told them. They said that they got reports like that from people working at the station fairly often. They told us that they had never really had any reason to go up there and that it was just some kids getting spooked by their own shadow, but that this was the worst it had ever been. Even after we left that place, the whole ordeal wasn't entirely over. We of course had to speak to the police about everything. Mostly about the missing people, but they wanted to know everything else as well. We ended up staying there for another month because of the police investigation and because we had technically breached our contract with the contracting company and the broadcasting company. The contractors dropped all charges and we and the broadcasting company settled out of court. Even after coming home, some weird things go on that are directly related to this whole thing. If I ever tell the story, whether that be online or in person, my dogs always act up if they are with me. Even when I'm not home, my neighbors, without fail, tell me that my dogs made a ton of noise. That could be a coincidence or them trying to spook me, but I guess anything is possible.
This happened this most recent August. Second weirdest thing I've ever seen in this state, easily the most unsettling. Get 3 days free after doing 24/7 grandpa care for 2 months. Get 2 friends to go in the mountains with me. Leave Friday night in a truck pulling a trailer with 2 four-wheelers. Light finally fades about 10 p.m., mid-August in Alaska. Take it easy on speed because big old diesel. Get to the target highway at about midnight. Pavement ends at mile 21-ish. Everything to now has been pretty normal. A couple miles on the road turns left with a small pull-off on the right side. A little Subaru parked there facing into the road. LED light bar at face level. PNG. There's someone leaning on the hood watching us as we drive by. Tired by this point, not real concerned. Figure it's someone waiting for their hunting buddy, it's caribou season. Keep going. This highway is really rough in the fall. It's gravel, and the heavy fall rains combined with all the fall-time hunting and camping traffic tears it up. Going 30 miles per hour if I'm lucky. Truck, trailer, and teeth all going daka from washboards. Nice bright full moon, can miss the worst spots. Hit a real long straight stretch before the trailhead pulls off. Get half a mile down a straight stretch, about halfway. Lights in the rear view mirror. Bright as F light bar again. This guy hauling ass, 50 to 60 miles per hour or more. One friend is zonked in the back, the other one is spaced out. Point the light bar car out to him. He watches them in the side mirror, and doesn't seem too unsettled. Car is maybe 200 feet back when I finally pull into the trailhead. Car catches up 10 seconds later. Slows down to about 5 miles per hour going by, obviously checking us out. Hackles raised. Tiff. Park the truck, watch them drive down the highway for a bit. Let out a deep breath. Look to the left at the other corner of this parking area. There's an SUV parked there, no big deal. This is where it gets way out of whack. Wake up the other friend, kill the engine, hop out. Instant gut assessment, shit screwed, we're being hunted, time to go. My response to this novel sensation, hey, there's something written on that SUV. Shine my flashlight on it. Moloch, written in the dust on the back window since it was parked. Oh what? Friends are stretching legs, one has his AR out. They're both too quiet. Check out SUV. Engine still warm. Parked within a few hours. Only the front passenger door is locked. Shoes and shorts, comfy driving wear, on front seats. Full packs and compound bow in back. Full cooler. Tent. Everything is untouched. 6MO expired youth group sticker on hood, empty coffee hut coffees. Looks like a young couple out to camp. Friends are checking out this SUV. We're all at independently reached 10 out of 10 maximum alert. Look around the whole area, nobody is there. No fresh tracks except in the parking area itself. Another pair of cars with LED light bars go by hauling maximum ass. We keep rifles on them from cover as they go by. Give in to gut feeling, leave. Camp 30 miles away on a different highway. Come back in the morning. SUV still there, untouched. Still no sign of anybody around. The terrible gut feeling is gone. Take the four-wheelers and go 8 miles back in the mountains. Have a good time camping, get bullied by a caribou. Come back the next day. Nobody was out there, great lines of sight and nowhere to hide. SUV untouched. Food in the back is starting to go off. Get back to town. Call SUV into troopers. Dispatcher goes, yeah, that's sketchy as F, I'll send someone out. Call back 2 weeks later to see what came of it. No record of having ever called it in, but they have every other call I've made. Sorry, K. Some stories don't have a good ending. I'm convinced we were getting checked out and the only reason they let us be was because we had our ARs propped up on the seats and were very visible. I never have found any explanation for what I saw out there. All I know is that gut feeling I got when I got out of the truck was the spookiest thing I've ever felt, and all three of us felt it independently. There's something going on out there, I'm convinced.
3 years later?
I hate when this is posted. I wrote it and know it's true, and it makes me wonder about the rest of the green texts in these threads. I like to believe creepy green texts are elaborate works of fiction. It's more comforting than accepting them all as true. But I see my own account, something I know happened and that now exists as a green text, and it makes me wonder how many of the rest are also true. I agree people should be aware and armed. The total obliviousness people seem to have is astounding. Here's fresh green text, I guess. Go for a hike up a mountain with some girls. Literally, you park, cross the highway, and go up the mountain 3,000 feet. No trees, so you can see your car all the way up and down. Bully the girls into going to the top. Coming down the mountainside, see a van parked down there. Closer to the bottom now, van still there, nobody's come up the trail. 5 minutes from getting back to the car, 2 men are now leaning against the van watching us. I stay at the back of the pack as the girls cross the highway, jacket back and hand on pistol. Full eye contact with the rough-looking Russian and his buddy as they smoke. Girls say hi to the guys and chit-chat about whatever as they take their stuff off and get in the car. Get in once the girls are in and we go. Comment on how sketch the guys are, girls all go, what do you mean? Dudes sat in an idling windowless van parked by the car they had to return to in the middle of the Alaskan wilderness and waited 2 hours for the girls and I to come down the mountain. This set off 0 alarm bells for them. I did not pursue any of those girls. Paranoia is a mandatory trait for me, it turns out, that way I don't have to worry so much. One of them walked into a moose on another hike. If people can't clue into stupid obvious predatory behavior, how are they going to avoid Molochites in kitted-out foresters? It's all screwed.
Anon, I learned long before I discovered 4 chins that this world is not what we were taught it was while growing up. I'm actually really glad to be talking to you, as I've had a question about your original account. Do you think those guys were using the lighting rigs on their cars to emulate cop cars to trick people into pulling over? And thanks for the new stuff. Are you still in Alaska?
I'm still in Alaska, yes. I don't think the lighting was to emulate the police. The troopers run regular headlights and are far and few. There is generally one trooper covering the Denali Highway at a given time, and he lives in Delta Junction. Take a look at a highway map to get an idea of how little coverage there is. My guess is the lights serve 3 purposes. Seeing into vehicle cabs to case the occupants. Blinding victims to make them easier to capture, reduced peripheral awareness. Make it easier to run the highway at 50 to 60 miles per hour at night. The Denali is not a travel highway. You're there because your destination is on it. All they have to do is follow and wait. I have since come to learn there is a witch's coven centered around some sort of energy nexus or portal near Fox, Alaska. There's also something living in the woods near Haystack north of Fairbanks. It's a big state, easy to stay lost. Here's another memory, from when I was young. Lawn party with my friend playing Company of Heroes. 3 a.m., pretty late, and something out the window keeps catching my attention. Pause the game and we look out the window. The sky flashes every 3 to 5 seconds. Flashes are red or green, the color of the aurora, but the entire sky. After the last flash we keep looking out the window, wondering if we really saw that. Mom comes in the room rubbing her eyes, asks if we were playing with a flashlight because a bright light woke her up. Her room is on the opposite side of the house. Tell her no, the sky lit up. She goes back to bed. I can't figure out how to explain it. Allegedly auroras are solar particles bombarding the upper atmosphere and causing photon release. But for a perfectly uniform particle bombardment with equally uniform but periodically differentiated, green flash, pink flash, etc., bombardment density to occur even once naturally seems functionally impossible, let alone 10 times. Last story. It's 6 and I must rest. Be fishing. Run a load of fish to the car. Tourists taking pictures of the woods and chattering about a bear. ofug.png. Head back out to get more fish. Uncle's Newfoundland dog comes out of the woods and joins me on trail. Realize that they thought the Newfie was a bear. Tourists. And a comfy one. Out on the Denali Highway hunting blueberries. Friends and GF are picking, but I want to fish. Head down the trail another quarter-mile to the creek by myself. Make my way up the creek while casting for grayling. Go at least 3/4 of a mile up the creek, absolutely kill it and get 5 nice grayling. Look up at the sky as I pack up the last fish. Get urgent feeling that I must go back now even though the weather is clear. Start walking back. See GF coming down the trail with my dog, she came looking for me. At that moment the urgent feeling dissipated, even though a storm was blowing in. An absolute certainty that this is the woman I am supposed to be with washes over me, know in that moment I will marry her. Find out many months later she went through the same cycle of urgent pull, relief, and absolute certainty in that same period. Where we met on the trail was the halfway point from where we each started, like we both got the prod to start moving at the same time. Taught her how to clean fish and she didn't even think it was gross. Engaged and have a child coming now. The Denali Highway has an energy that is hard to describe. Most of the time it ignores you. Sometimes it actively tries to kill you. Sometimes it gives you gifts. It's why I keep going back despite the spooky shit, and I wonder if that's not simply the energy of the world when it's not poisoned by endless overlapping radio frequencies.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check out the Odyssey page in the description for a second archive of the channel's videos.